Ladies and gentlemen, today we stand at a historic crossroads, witnessing a moment that is reshaping the balance of global power. The world has long viewed the United States as the unchallenged leader on the global stage. For decades, its decisions set the tone for international relations, trade, and technology. Yet now, something extraordinary has happened. India has made a daring move, a move so bold and decisive that even America, the giant, has been left speechless. India's assertion of sovereignty in the modern global landscape is not merely a political stance, but a powerful declaration that the nation has matured into a self-reliant and confident power capable of standing on its own terms. For decades, developing countries have often been subject to the influence of global superpowers, compelled to align their policies, strategies, and even their values with external expectations. India's daring move to assert its sovereignty, especially in a manner that leaves even America speechless, represents a significant departure from that historical pattern. It shows that India is no longer willing to be seen as a follower, but rather as a nation that acts according to its own national interests, regardless of the pressure it may face. This is not an act of defiance for the sake of conflict, but an act of maturity that signifies a deep awareness of the responsibilities and opportunities that sovereignty entails. In this context, extends beyond political independence. It involves the ability to make economic, technological, and defense-related decisions without external interference. India has demonstrated that it is willing to chart its own course, even when its actions might not align with the preferences of global powers. This move symbolizes courage, because the easy path would have been to remain compliant and avoid friction. Instead, India chose the harder but more dignified road of independence. Such decisions are a reminder that sovereignty is not a passive condition. It must be actively protected and expressed through bold actions. India's step is therefore a testimony to its belief that a nation's destiny should be shaped within its own borders, by its own people, and for its own future. The global reaction, particularly America's silence or surprise, speaks volumes about the magnitude of India's action. For a long time, America has been accustomed to having its decisions respected, or at the very least, acknowledged without resistance. But when a country like India stands firm and unapologetically pursues its sovereign rights, it challenges that norm. It sends the message that the world has changed, that power is no longer concentrated in a single pole, and that sovereignty can be exercised by any nation with conviction. India's move does not reject cooperation with America or the West, but it makes clear that cooperation will happen on equal terms, not under pressure or domination. At its heart, sovereignty is about respect, both self-respect and global respect. By asserting its independence through daring decisions, India is demanding recognition as a partner, not a subordinate. This step strengthens the nation internally as well, because citizens witnessing such actions gain pride in their country's leadership and direction. It builds a national identity that is aligned with dignity, courage, and self-determination. And in the long run, it redefines India's role in the world, positioning it as a leader whose choices are not dictated from outside, but born from within. This assertion of sovereignty is, therefore, not just about India today. It is about securing its place in the world for generations to come. The geopolitical landscape of the 21st century is undergoing dramatic shifts And India's bold move is a powerful reflection of that reality. For decades, the world order has been shaped by a few dominant powers there, with the United States occupying the central position as the most influential voice in international affairs. However, India's decisive action has challenged this pattern, signaling that the global balance of power is no longer unipolar or even bipolar, but increasingly multipolar. By taking a daring step that leaves America without a ready response, India is affirming its emergence as a strategic leader on the global stage. This is not merely a regional assertion of influence. It is a worldwide declaration that India has both the will and the capability to influence global directions in politics, economics, and security. This power shift is rooted in years of gradual transformation. India's growing economic strength, its technological advancements, and its expanding defense capabilities have all contributed to its rise. Yet, what makes this moment particularly significant is the confidence with which India is willing to act independently, without waiting for approval or validation from traditional global centers of power. The boldness of this move indicates that India no longer sees itself as a developing nation in the shadow of greater powers, but as a fully capable player that can set agendas and lead initiatives. This shift in self-perception is just as important as the external reactions it provokes, because it transforms India's global image from that of a cautious actor to a decisive leader. America's reaction, or rather its stunned silence, reinforces the magnitude of this shift. For decades, countries around the world would hesitate before making moves that might unsettle US interests. But India has demonstrated that it can act in alignment with its own vision, even if it leaves Washington without immediate answers. This development indicates a recalibration of power, where America can no longer assume that its preferences will dictate global outcomes. Instead, the US must now recognize India as a sovereign equal capable of shaping international debates and influencing outcomes on its own terms. This is a monumental transformation because it changes the way global institutions, alliances, and strategies will evolve in the years to come. The implications of this geopolitical power shift extend far beyond the relationship between India and America. Other nations, both in Asia and beyond, are now witnessing the rise of a confident India that can balance, counter, or even lead in situations where previously only the United States or a handful of Western powers had a voice. For smaller nations, this provides an alternative partner and a new center of gravity in international affairs. For major powers, it signals the arrival of a new competitor and collaborator at the same time. India's daring move, therefore, is not just a single event. It is part of a broader narrative of change in the global order. It affirms that leadership in the modern world is no longer concentrated in one corner, but is increasingly distributed, with India claiming its rightful place at the table. India's daring step is deeply tied to its growing economic independence, a transformation that has taken decades to build but is now reaching a stage where it commands global attention. For a long time, India was viewed primarily as a developing country dependent on Western nations for technology, investment, and trade opportunities. However, this bold decision signals that India has shifted gears, is positioning itself as a self-reliant economic powerhouse, capable of standing on its own and even challenging the dominance of long-established powers. Economic independence in this context does not imply isolation. Instead, it means the ability to negotiate from a position of strength to make choices that prioritize national interests and to reduce vulnerability to external pressures, particularly from the United States and other Western economies. One of the most striking aspects of this transformation is India's commitment to self-reliance through initiatives like Atmanirbhar Bharat, which emphasize domestic production, their technological innovation and industrial growth. By investing in its own industries, from defense manufacturing to renewable energy and digital technology, India is reducing its reliance on imports and foreign systems. This is a critical factor in economic independence, as it ensures that no external power can use trade dependency as leverage to influence India's decisions. The daring move that has left America speechless is a practical demonstration of this progress, an announcement to the world that India's economy is strong enough to support its bold political and strategic choices. Another important element of this independence lies in the digital and technological sphere. India has emerged as one of the largest technocracies in the world, with millions of skilled professionals driving innovation in software, artificial intelligence, and space exploration. By creating indigenous digital platforms, developing its own space programs, and investing heavily in science and technology, India is reducing reliance on Western technological giants. This not only strengthens its economy, but also gives it the freedom to set its own rules in the digital era. Economic independence becomes tangible when a country can make daring moves without fearing technological isolation or economic retaliation from powerful nations. Global trade and partnerships also reflect India's growing confidence. Rather than depending on a single bloc, India is diversifying its economic relationships, building strong ties with both developed and developing nations, and leading initiatives that enhance South cooperation. This broad network ensures that India is not overly reliant on one country or region, further strengthening its ability to act independently. The more diversified and resilient its economy becomes, the greater its freedom of action on the global stage. This economic independence is not just about numbers, GDP, or trade statistics. It represents a deeper sense of self-confidence, a belief that India can chart its own course in the global economy without bowing to pressure. America's astonishment at India's daring move stems from this very fact. A nation once considered dependent has transformed itself into a force that can make bold decisions backed by economic strength. This independence ensures that India's voice in the global order is not only heard but respected. India's daring move also reflects its rising military and strategic confidence, an evolution that has been steadily shaping the nation's global position over the past decades. Historically, India has been cautious in its defense policies, often prioritizing diplomacy and restraint over aggressive strategic maneuvers. Yet, in today's world of complex geopolitics, India has recognized that true sovereignty and global respect require the backing of credible defense strength. This bold step that stunned America demonstrates India's readiness to secure its national interests with a combination of military preparedness, strategic alliances, and a determination to act decisively when necessary. It is no longer content with being a passive player, but is asserting itself as a nation that can safeguard its own future. Military confidence does not appear overnight. It is the result of years of investment, modernization, and careful strategic planning. India has been expanding its defense capabilities across land, sea, air, and now space and cyber domains. By building indigenous defense systems, strengthening naval power in the Indian Ocean, and enhancing its missile and space programs, India has created a multifaceted security framework that can protect its sovereignty from external threats. This kind of preparedness gives it the courage to take bold stances without fearing undue retaliation or dependency on foreign military powers. The daring move that surprised America is underpinned by this silent but powerful transformation of India's defense landscape. Equally important is India's strategic confidence in how it engages globally. Rather than being confined to one block of alliances, India has adopted a multi-alignment approach, cooperating with the United States in some areas while simultaneously deepening partnerships with Russia, Europe, and emerging powers in Asia and Africa. This flexible approach allows India to maneuver independently and prevents it from being locked into any one power's orbit. It also demonstrates that India is capable of shaping the geopolitical game rather than being shaped by it. America's speechlessness in this context stems from the realization that India's strategic decisions are no longer predictable or easily influenced, but are calculated to serve its own national interest. Beyond hardware and alliances, confidence also comes from a shift in mindset. India's leadership has made it clear that national security will not be compromised under pressure, and that strategic patience does not mean weakness. When necessary, India has shown the will to respond firmly to threats, whether on its borders or in the global arena. This readiness to act reinforces its credibility as a rising power that cannot be ignored. In essence, India's daring move is more than a single event. It is a reflection of its growing defense strength and strategic wisdom. By combining technological advancement, diversified partnerships, and a clear vision of its security priorities, India has gained the confidence to make decisions that leave even powerful nations like America astonished. This transformation ensures that India's voice is not just heard diplomatically, but also reinforced by credible strength, giving it a decisive role in shaping the global balance of power. India's bold decision is not just rooted in politics, economics, or military strength. It also reflects a deeper sense of cultural and civilizational pride that has been steadily reawakening in recent decades. For thousands of years, India has been home to one of the world's oldest civilizations, rich in philosophy, science, art, and spirituality. Despite periods of colonization, exploitation, and division, the Indian spirit has endured and carried forward a legacy of resilience and creativity. The daring move that has left America speechless is, therefore, not only a political act, but a cultural statement that India's civilizational strength is alive, relevant, and capable of shaping the modern world. This pride is not about nostalgia, but about reclaiming an identity that was long overshadowed by colonial narratives and external dominance. India's leaders and people increasingly see themselves not as inheritors of a fragile past, but as custodians of a timeless heritage that can inspire confidence in the present. When India asserts itself on the global stage, it is in many ways invoking centuries of resilience, showing that a civilization which has withstood invasions, foreign rule, and internal challenges has the strength to stand tall against any global power. America's surprise stems partly from underestimating the psychological and cultural force behind India's decisions. The role of culture in this transformation is visible in how India projects itself internationally. From yoga and Ayurveda to cinema, literature, and technology, India's soft power is spreading across continents, influencing global lifestyles and perspectives. But cultural pride also operates internally, fostering unity among diverse communities and reminding citizens of their shared civilizational roots. This unity gives India the courage to take daring steps, because a nation confident in its cultural identity is less likely to bend under pressure. Such pride builds a foundation of self-respect that translates into national policy and bold actions on the world stage. Civilizational pride also influences how India perceives its role in global issues. Rather than being a follower of Western frameworks, India often offers unique perspectives rooted in its own traditions, whether on environmental sustainability, peaceful coexistence, or economic models that prioritize balance and inclusivity. These ideas are not just political stances, but reflections of values drawn from a civilization that has survived and thrived for millennia. By acting decisively in a way that stuns America, India is signaling that it no longer needs validation from external systems. It carries its own moral and cultural compass. What makes this keynote significant is the way cultural pride empowers India's future. There, a nation that draws strength from its civilizational past is not afraid to make bold moves, because it knows its roots run deep there. The daring step that shocked the world is more than a strategy. It is a declaration that India is not merely another modern state, but a civilization state with an enduring legacy. This realization magnifies the impact of its actions, leaving powerful nations like America not only surprised, but also compelled to respect the cultural force that drives India's confidence. India's daring move that left America speechless carries with it a profound message to the entire world, one that transcends the immediate geopolitical implications of the act itself. The message is clear. India is no longer content to follow the path laid out by others, nor is it willing to remain confined to the role of a regional power. Instead, it is asserting its presence as a global actor whose decisions, ideas, and actions can shape the direction of world affairs. This is not a message of confrontation, but of transformation. It signals to every nation, large or small, that the established global order is shifting, and India intends to play a central role in defining what comes next. For decades, international politics has been dominated by the influence of a few powerful countries. Smaller nations often had to adjust to this imbalance, aligning themselves with either the United States or other major players in order to protect their interests. India's bold step disrupts this dynamic by showing that a nation can rise with confidence, guided by its own vision, and still earn respect from all sides. By acting independently, even in the face of US expectations, India has conveyed that true strength comes from self-belief and a willingness to challenge norms. This lesson resonates far beyond its borders, offering encouragement to other countries seeking to assert their sovereignty in a complex and often unfair global system. The message also carries weight in economic and strategic terms. By standing firm and making a daring decision, India demonstrates that nations with growing economies and populations can no longer be sidelined in global decision-making. It signals that influence is not restricted to traditional powers, but can be claimed by those who combine resilience, innovation, and courage. America's silence is telling. It shows that even the most dominant voices in global affairs must now acknowledge India as a force that cannot be ignored or underestimated. For countries across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, this example serves as proof that they too can shape their futures rather than wait for direction from established centers of power. Culturally and morally, the message India sends is equally powerful. It reflects the idea that a nation rooted in deep civilizational values can stand tall without losing its identity. India is showing the world that modernization does not require cultural surrender and that leadership can emerge from a balance of tradition and progress. This broader perspective adds depth to India's daring move, making it not just a strategic choice, but a moral statement about diversity, independence, and dignity on the global stage. India's action communicates that the future of world politics will no longer be about one nation dictating terms, but about multiple voices shaping collective destiny. The daring move is not only a demonstration of India's confidence, but also a reminder to the world that a new chapter of multipolarity has begun. In this chapter, respect must be earned through dialogue, equality, and boldness, and India has just made its position unmistakably clear. India's daring move that left America speechless is more than a moment in geopolitics. It is a defining signal of a new global order. By asserting its sovereignty, displaying economic independence, showcasing military confidence, and drawing strength from its cultural pride, India has proven that it is no longer confined to the role of a supporting actor in world affairs. Instead, it has stepped into the spotlight as a nation capable of making bold choices on its own terms. America's stunned reaction is not a sign of hostility, but an acknowledgement of India's rising influence, one that cannot be overlooked. The message to the world is unmistakable. The future will not be shaped by one power alone, but by multiple voices, with India standing among the leaders. This moment marks the beginning of a new era where India commands not only attention, but also lasting respect.